All right, now we're live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Work in Progress, a live show about work, life, and everything in between. My name is Colin from the Reno Collective, and today I'm joined by Rachel.
Hello, I am Rachel, also from the Reno Collective.
So, tonight we're going to be talking about live events, both live streamed, recorded, all the different types of online events that you could potentially have on the internet. I know you've probably been to many of them, but we really want to focus on how to make events that don't suck. And we've learned a lot in doing all kinds of different events, from smaller, just small group events to larger events such as this. And I think there's a lot that we can share there, just in terms of what not to do. We've done, if you've watched some of our last episodes, you've seen, you know, when you're dealing with technology, there's no shortage of tech issues. So
Nope.
just how to figure out how to get around all of those as well.
Well, and while we're all calm, cool, and collected right now, about 17 minutes ago, we weren't.
Yeah, the
So,
first pro tip is do not redo your network or your internet setup right before you do a live show.
right.
We got it fixed plenty of time. The shows have been starting early and earlier, so the tools that we're using today are not necessarily the best tools for your events. But as we're talking about some of these things, we're going to be sharing some of the tools that we use, as well as answering any questions that you might have around specific events. We have a couple questions that we collected before this, so we can kind of start with those. But really, I think we need to jump into the idea that events are hard enough when they're in person, let alone doing them online, right?
Yeah.
You have a topic, content, some sort of theme to your event, some sort of goal that you're trying to accomplish, whether it's a social event or a business event, and getting people
Right.
to show up is hard. Doing the planning is just a
hmm
lot of work, and
Well, and
so
prior to that, even picking a topic, if you've taken the time to ask and get people's feedback on a topic, that's a lot of work too.
yeah. So I think the big thing that we've seen is you don't want to spend all this time planning something like that and have nobody show up.
Yeah.
I think right now we're in the unprecedented times, but
hmm
even before the pandemic, there's a lot of things that people like the idea of them existing, but they're not going to show up. And there's a few different phrases around this. There's something called like the mom test, where uh, if you ask someone, if you were to ask your mom if something's a good idea, she's probably going to say yes because she's supportive of whatever it is you're trying to do. And so,
Haven't heard that one. All right.
right, and so the mom
Yeah.
test is a pretty bad way of testing something, because it,
Yeah.
you don't want to go to people who are going to tell you what you want to hear. You want to actually find out what there might be a need for. So if you're doing like a business event and you're trying to charge for it, then you need to actually be filling a need. We've done
Yeah.
events that are a little bit on the edge of social and business, like Ignite
Mhm.
Reno, which has so far been all in person. But it's something that I think we might actually workshop here tonight, as what if we did Ignite
Yeah.
online, because a lot of people are asking for us to do Ignite online. And so I think that would be a good one to kind of workshop as we go through this. But what would we need to do to make Ignite worth paying for online, worth attending, worth taking the time that it takes to watch it, whether it's live or recorded on
hmm
your own time?
Right. And you've always had Ignite. You've always been able to watch Ignite after the fact. Well, various videos that you've put out. So what makes you want to log in and watch it live versus after? Yeah.
Definitely. And I say, I mean, I think for a lot of people, going to a conference or to a
Mm,
live talk, you're really going because of all the people that you're going to meet in the hallways beforehand. At a conference, it's the lunchtime chit chat, and things like that. That
yeah.
really is where you get to get a lot of value, right? Almost all the conference talks at any conference are always recorded anyway, and you can watch
hmm
them afterwards. So where, how can you reproduce some of that in an online event and in online channels, some shape or form?
Yeah. I mean that is a huge question everywhere. And today we're going to try and tackle a bit of it, our section of it.
Yeah. So let's start off with a few things that make online events suck in general, and we can start to get through how to make those things suck a little bit less, so that you can have
Yes.
a really good event.
Well, wait, let's start with what makes them good. Let's start with the positive. There's a couple of positives.
Yep. Let's do that
So,
first.
You do like an online event, you can reach a larger audience, right? Like you could reach people across the world potentially. I mean, that is a possibility. Whether you're able to reach them to actually get them to tune in is another thing, but you can quadruple, 100 oople your audience. You also have a wider array of speakers that you can bring on, because if you've had money constraints or time constraints with travel, then you could just simply bring them on remotely and voila, speakers that you may not have been able to afford or have before. Of course, right now, safer. And then again, cheaper if there aren't travel costs or, you know, luncheon costs you need to cover and all of the extra pieces, if you've got printed things, you've got tickets and ticket takers, all of those things. So there are some pros to online events. However, making them not suck is hard.
So let's go ahead and go through some of the things that do make online events suck. So we have,
Okay.
let's see, and one of the things is going to be technical issues, which we just had a very small one that you don't even know happened, and I just fixed it.
Wow.
But the big thing here is I think that we have a general Zoom burnout right now. There's so
Yes.
many online events. There's so many things demanding our attention right now, which I do think we'll get into it, but it's something to think about when you're trying to do an online event, because it might honestly be worth waiting until we can have in-person events again. Your content, your format, whatever that might be, just might not lend itself
Hmm.
well to an online event, and
Hmm.
adding to that noise that's all happening right now, which is there's a lot of it.
Yeah, you just get lost. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're adding to that noise for whatever it's worth. But
Hmm.
I'd say the next thing is that online events tend to not be very interactive. There's obviously a lot of different kinds of events, so I'm talking mostly about the ones where people are talking at you. In this
Right.
case, this is meant to be a live show, kind of more like a podcast format, but we do have live comments on YouTube, Twitch. Uh, where else do we have? Facebook Live,
Hmm.
Periscope. So if you have any questions as we're talking, definitely ask, and we can address those as those pop up. It's also going to just be that, again, that it may be the wrong format for you. That doing
Right.
online, like I said, it might make sense for you to wait. Um, the other one is don't just throw it over the fence and call it done. So don't just repackage your current event
Yeah.
and throw it out there on the internet as a show or as whatever you want to do with that. Rethink how you would do this if you needed to redo your event today, right?
Right.
If this was always the norm, how would you teach? How would you entertain? How would you educate people, right? So how would you do that?
Right. And when you're talking about format, if you have to lock yourself in a room to figure out how to use Facebook Live and set a mini webinar online to figure out how to use it, does your audience, are they going to have to do that too? So is the tech you're using actually being used by your audience? Can they access it properly, or are they going to need to take a little mini webinar to learn how to watch even?
Definitely, and we're seeing that unfortunately right now with with schooling, so many different
Yeah.
platforms being used, and you're having to educate your audience how to interact with you and how to interact with the content. I think there's a lot of really cool events right now that are being done in very non-traditional ways. Like there's an event that um, I think Newark Cities did, which was it took place in a Google Doc. It was a massively collaborative Google Doc, and I think they probably also had a Zoom going, but it was just 100 people all collaboratively editing this Google Doc, which sounds crazy, but
Hmm.
it's extremely interactive, right? And you can jump in there and participate, and
Right.
it's not a normal Zoom call like you would expect. But yeah, I
Huh.
think for us, we're streaming to 4+ sites right now. I don't expect everyone to obviously be watching them on all different sites. You're going to pick the one that's right for you, and I think the big thing there
Right.
is being where your audience is. So we're not streaming to TikTok because our audience is not really on TikTok, right? So we
Yeah.
picked things that make sense for us. And
Hmm.
Twitch is an interesting one. I know that there's a few people watching on Twitch, and that one's interesting
Right.
because it's mostly gaming content. But I'm seeing more and more people during the pandemic embracing Twitch as another
Hmm.
place that we can play around with and see how that goes.
Yeah. I had a lot of visual content on there as well.
Yeah. The last one's going to be try to add some substance in short periods of time. So maybe you
Mm.
had a 6 hour conference that you want to bring online. It does not need to be a 6 hour long Zoom call. It should not be a 6 hour long Zoom call.
Yeah.
I would say like this is akin to don't host a 50-minute talk with 15 minutes of content. If there's a lot of fluff, if there's a lot of can you see my screen, is my
Mm-hmm.
mic on, we all hate those in our normal meetings. Don't bring that into someone's life when they're trying to watch and enjoy something. Just assume that everyone has the ability to see you. They're going to tell you if they can't see you, so don't worry about asking. Um,
Right.
this is also going to play into the tools. If you're learning how to
Mm-hmm.
stream, there's a bunch of tools for monitoring your own stream. We've kind of gone overboard. I have like last time, I have two computers running with a lot of different screens up, and we'll talk about that because it might not be the right thing for you to produce your own show. In
Yeah.
our case, we're
Right.
producing our own show, and what I love about this, do you want to talk a little bit about our podcast and our ill-fated podcast and what happened there and why we're doing this?
Yeah. Yeah. So we started with one of the bigger projects that we started with was RC at Home, which was our podcast. And how, coming up with topics, we had tons of topics, but what happened was became a log jam, as in we'd created the content, but we needed to edit in order to put it out there. And so that stopped all processes.
Yeah.
Whereas this allows us, yes, there's a lot of tech that happens, or a lot of, glitching and troubleshooting that happens before the show. But once the show is over, good or bad, it's out there and we're
Yeah.
done with it. And then it's marketing the next, building the topics for the next. And that was what led us to transition from the podcast to something else. But if to live stream. But then again, there's a lot of podcasters out there that the process of editing is part of the joy of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that isn't built in as something that you really enjoy, then live stream is potentially an option if you know all the technology that requires.
Yeah, definitely. I think podcasting is a little bit lower barrier to entry, but it requires
Mm-hmm.
more time. It is
Yes.
unfortunate that most podcasts, they start off with the goal of doing weekly, and then it becomes an every other week podcast, then it becomes a monthly podcast, and it's just a lot of work. What I do love about this format is once we hit stop, like it's out there, right? Everyone's been watching it live. It gets saved everywhere. Yes, there's some forethought that we need to put into it. We have show notes, so we're using Google Docs where both of us can add notes right now, and that's why you keep seeing me looking over. So we're still working on the, where are my eyes at right now? But going through that, a little bit of foresight. We had to do the show notes even when we did the podcast, so that wasn't extra work for us. And then this format also allows us to bring on other guests. The last episode we got to do recorded video with Ashley and Mike's different workspaces. So you can also do a little bit of both. We're fully live right now, but you could mix some pre-recorded videos, which I think if you haven't watched it yet, yesterday's Apple keynote, I actually think Apple's keynotes have gotten better since the pandemic because they're fully recorded, fully edited. Like it's like going to a movie, right? It's a movie about all of their Apple products, but they aren't trying to figure out like how do we present this on a stage where we have all these constraints, and then you end up with all these awkward fumbling of this person introducing this person and all these little gimmicks and things. You end up with a really well produced video, and they made it at 10 a.m. but they live streamed it at 10 a.m. but it was all fully recorded. And I think if we did an Ignite Reno live show, it would be that way, right? We would make everybody pre-record their 5-minute talks. We would make sure that they're just super tight, well edited, and then we can actually produce a show with intros and outros and all of that fun stuff, and then actually live stream it so that you still get the interactions, the tweets, the Facebook Live, all that kind of stuff.
See, now I've seen a couple of live streamed where there has been recorded elements. And one of the problems I have is when someone in the recorded element does something that they would have done in front of a crowd, and so there would have been a response from the crowd, but it's totally silent. That to me always feels disjointed. And I think most recently, I'm thinking of the Democratic National Convention, I guess,
Yeah.
where someone would stand and it'd be someone, orating about something. And usually there'd be a response, some sort of feeling from the crowd, but it was quiet and then quick cut to the next recorded thing. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, like, where's the laugh without a laugh track?
Right. Yeah. If anyone's interested in Conan, he's been experimenting with a lot of really funny videos where, similar to sports, he has a bunch of cardboard cutouts of his audience, and they don't know. I mean, even people who have been professionally, literally sitting behind a desk talking to an audience for a really long time, they're all figuring it out too. What does Conan look like in a socially distanced world? Again, all of this is temporary, but how do you do what you were doing before? And he's having a lot of fun with it. They're using like t-shirt cannon to like take out cardboard targets in the audience. And
can you buy your cardboard target? I would buy my cardboard target.
Yeah, you want to have just like a cardboard Rachel that we can stand up in the collective.
Yeah, I don't want to be at like a football game. I couldn't care less. But to be on Conan, why not? I want to be in the audience.
Yeah. So we're all experimenting with it. But I would agree. Like, if it's going to be recorded, don't put those gimmicks in there or those things that you expect, unless you plan on editing in some sort of clapping, laugh track, whatever that might be. And then it's not very genuine in the first place. So it goes back to that. Don't just put it online. Definitely.
You've got to consider.
So what I'm going to do here is run through some of the more technical and strategy sides of things that you want to think about when you're thinking about what kind of event you want to do. And I think the first thing you want to do is literally think about what kind of event you want to do and why. If you don't have a good reason for doing it online, I'm going to repeat, maybe it's not a good idea to do it online.
Yeah.
It's also very, I guess the stakes are pretty low. So if you want to try it, go for it. Expect that not a lot of people are going to show up to your first one. I think we've literally seen just a steady rise of people on each show, just like in podcasting or really anything else you're going to do. You have to do it consistently so that people know and expect when to show up. We're doing this every Wednesday at 5. We're going to stick to that. Maybe one week we won't be able to do it, but maybe we have a pre-recorded version and you wouldn't actually know the difference. And so we can do things like that, and there's a lot of tools that allow you to facilitate that. So if you do decide that you have a good idea for an event and a good why, there's a few different formats to think about. So there's the 100% live stream, which is like what we're doing right now. And there's certain platforms for that. You could do a pre-recorded live stream, which is still set at a set time, but it was recorded in advance. You could just do a recorded video. You could just post a video to Facebook, YouTube, whatever that might be, and not worry about the audience. Obviously, with that one, you're going to lose any interaction. You're not going to have any comments, things like that. You don't have to go fully live either to the world. Like with this, anyone who has those links can go and watch it. You could just have a Zoom meeting. So we've done, do you want to talk about like our Codivation meetings? Those are a really good example of something we used to do in person, and we had to figure out how do we do that online.
Right. They're a type of an accountability group where we'd meet for 6 to 8 weeks, once a week. You sign up at the beginning, so you keep coming back. And it was a little more interpersonal while you're sitting in a small room with a small group of people. But it also took off real well, or transitioned real well on Zoom. Everyone still interacted. Zoom still has that awkward pause. I don't want to talk over you. Yes, like exactly. Like I don't want to do this and then so it's not perfect, but it worked really well. I think it transitioned really well.
Yeah, and I think with that one, don't be afraid to have small events. Zoom also has the ability to do breakout rooms. So if you had an event even up to like whatever your participant cap is, you can split them out and create topical rooms. So, you could say in this room we're going to talk about habits, in this room we're going to talk about Facebook Live and then people can go to the rooms that they want. Or you can randomize it and like say we're going to do speed dating style, and 4 people are going to go in each room and they're going to get to chat around a topic or whatever that might be. So that's definitely an option.
I participated in a networking It was a larger event with networking the 5 minutes beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
That was awkward.
I do think the anonymous side of it, you don't know who you're going to get paired with, is definitely interesting.
Like, hi, I found that awkward, but that's not everyone.
Yeah,
that's just me.
There is a cool Reno startup that is called Icebreaker Video. So I think it's icebreaker.video.
Wow.
And they do something similar, but you can actually set up games and quizzes and things like that, so that you can have these little icebreaker events where I haven't actually used it, so if you are interested in that, definitely go check it out. But you can have these little icebreaker games where you get matched with some people and you're playing, a trivia game or whatever that might be. And we did this, I think the world over did happy hour, Zoom drinks and things like that when the pandemic first started. But You'll notice when we talk about making online events that don't suck, most of those happy hours stopped pretty quickly. We did it for a while. It was a fun little gimmick, and then it was just kind of weird and awkward, and people would rather go outside and go for a walk
or cry quietly in their bedroom by themselves.
So the other format is the Zoom webinar. So you do have to have a webinar account with Zoom to do this. Obviously, there's GoToMeeting. There's all these other webinar options. I'm just sharing the ones that we've used. We'll post a roundup on our blog of all the different live stream and webinar type options that you could have. But with that, you have a little bit more tools around asking you have a larger audience. It's definitely a lot more talking at someone. But you get like registration tools from Zoom. You get the ability for people to raise their hand and ask questions and do that. And so I've seen a lot of people do ticketing with like Eventbrite. We watched a author interview with David Chang, and that was through Eventbrite. And then there was a webinar link for that, and then it was available on YouTube afterwards. And so, again, everyone is trying to continue moving forward, whatever their plans were, so that they don't have to cancel their book tours and things like that.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of those opportunities are out there simply because things have been canceled in person, and someone might be looking for an online opportunity.
Definitely.
Get that in.
So once you figure out a format, then I think you want to start thinking about your topic and your content, and whether or not you want to make it free or paid is also going to dictate a lot of the tools that you're using. So you could just do something like Eventbrite and send out a link, and that's pretty easy. In setting this up with Facebook Live, they actually are working on, I'm not sure if it's like a beta thing, but you can actually charge for Facebook Live events now. And do it through that as well. So if you're looking to do a ticketed event, if you maybe used to be an artist or still are an artist, but you don't get to go to a venue, right, to perform, this might be a way of creating live shows for you as well. It doesn't have to be all about business or discussing, right? It could be an entertainment thing. I do know that Facebook is cracking down on live DJ shows. I'm not sure what the rules are there, but
I was wondering. Okay.
I think there was some news that came out on that today. So if you're an artist and you're looking to figure that out, I mean, it could be. I've seen a lot of live streaming where people are artists on Twitch, where they're actually doing the illustration work live, and people just get to kind of see their process. And it's a very different way of getting people to follow you and see what you're up to.
Well, I think and I know you came across this recently, but we were also talking about time zone. Making very clear what time zone your event is in.
Yeah.
If it is live or if it's recorded, obviously not to, anyone can go at any point, but a live event, making sure you have the right time zone, which is maybe not necessarily something you'd think about, but if the majority of your audience is local, then perhaps picking a time that makes sense locally. If the majority of your audience is global, or if, say you're remote and your audience is in Michigan, well, then making sure you fit their time zone and appropriate timing, as well as making it clear.
Yeah, and what I've seen there is some people have actually created different live shows depending on the region. So a big company might have an East Coast and a West Coast show, and sometimes they're the exact same show, but sometimes they're actually different shows. And so obviously that's more work. But if it's going to be recorded, we'll talk about tools in a second, but one of the tools that we're using is called Restream, and Restream will actually let you pre-record an entire show and then schedule it. So I can, maybe you have an event that does happen at midnight our time for a different time zone. I don't need to be awake at midnight to make that show happen.
Right.
Obviously, there's a little bit of experimenting with it so that you don't just go to bed and hope that it happens. But
crossed.
I think there's a lot of tools around there for monitoring that. But you don't have to worry about hitting that, start streaming button and like, oh, my camera's now hot and now we're live. You can actually schedule those. And so I know that there's like a lot of, I think, Salesforce.com conference videos have been in different time zones. And then that way you can actually create content catered to the audience, maybe different languages, things like that as well.
Well, so talking about tools, I think that is a hugely important aspect of it, is what your own abilities are. So considering what your audience can handle and what they have knowledge of, but then also what you have. And I think I say it every show, but I show up, Colin does all the tech. There's elements where I could definitely learn a lot of it, but I'm not going to lock myself in a room again for like a week to try and figure out how to work something. If you're partnering up with somebody who can do that side of things, I think it makes for a lot stronger show rather than just throwing something together and putting it out there, like doing it properly when it goes out.
Yeah, and there's definitely companies out there, if you're a business looking to do a conference online, that will do the production for you. There's a lot of really specific tools. Some of these tools I was already familiar with from streaming games on Twitch. So, for me, this is fun. It's not more work. I enjoy this part of it. But there are some gotchas that you got to think about. There's definitely tools that make your life easier. So if you feel like you're not on the more hardcore tech side, I would check out an app called StreamYard. Again, we'll put links in the show notes for this, but StreamYard will actually use your camera, let you put in like screens in the behind you so that you can actually like present over a keynote deck or a PowerPoint deck. Share your screen if you're like trying to share a process or something like that. There's one that's I don't know how else it's going to come across on stream that is coming out from the former team from Evernote, and it's called It's literally MMHMM, and if you search for that, it's a really cool tech. You don't have to be super technical to stream with it. You can use it on Zoom. You can use it on any kind of camera interface. So those are things, if you're willing to just learn a little bit, those are really great. If you want to do the kind of super hardcore, mostly free version, there's an app called OBS, and that's what we use. OBS stands for Open Broadcaster Service, and it's when you first open it, there's just a lot of buttons, and you don't know what they all do, and you don't know if you're doing it right. There's just a lot of testing, and so we use OBS to stream to Restream. Restream then sends it out to Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope. And then I assume you could also put it out to LinkedIn, things like that, if you have a presence there. All
right. Yeah. Ethernet.
Yeah. So if you're going to be streaming, if you're going to be streaming, you should definitely be plugged in. Do not rely on Wi-Fi for that. I think when I actually can see a graph of how well our show's doing, at the very beginning, we were pretty choppy, and then it's stabilized. You may also have different experiences at home if you're watching us just because of your own internet. But there's, again, a lot of tools that we'll link to that just help you know, like, everyone hears every other word that you're saying right now. Yeah. That's also where you get the audience kind of telling you why, what you're doing. So All Terrain Family is asking, why not use YouTube Premiere? I actually don't know what that is, so we might have to get Mike on to talk about that. But I did schedule this event on YouTube, which if you subscribe to us, allows you to be notified when the show goes live. I think there's some other tools that he's talking to, because I've seen Mike do some live shows on his channel as well, so we can definitely learn from other people doing these things. The really cool thing is that there are so many YouTube videos on how to YouTube, how to Twitch, how to Facebook Live.
Exactly.
But you got to go down that rabbit hole of learning all those different things.
Yeah. And, I I think it's also important making the content interesting, and sometimes, just standing there is really not that interesting. And so some of those that you were talking about as far as tools, being able to add graphics or adding the video. So the example you were talking about from our show last week, having video of workspaces and then being able to talk to the person about that workspace instead of an awkward, let me take my computer around the room and make
Right.
everyone sick and dizzy, having those elements added in, or, video from a clip from Jurassic Park. I don't know. But you can add, making it interesting in the same way that you would consider something on a stage. How you would make that interesting is something to also consider.
Yeah, something we'll put in the show notes, but Wistia is a business video hosting company, and they have a weekly live show where
Mm-hmm.
it's called Out of Office Hours, and I really like how he really dives
Yeah.
into, if you're like a video producer, how do you do your job, in this world today. And
And
he's the one that has that Jurassic Park. He'll just
yeah.
have this Jurassic Park running on VHS in the background, and he'll be talking about something, and every now and then he'll just go check in on where the Jurassic Park crew is in the movie. They'll be like, let's just go see how they're doing over here.
Yeah.
And it's just a fun little element, but he's known, I think, for that at this point. At least
Mm-hmm.
I've watched enough to where I'm like, okay, I wonder if they got to that part of the movie yet. But yeah, I mean, even like our intro graphic where it said stream was starting with the art from Leah,
Mm-hmm.
that was like the space record player. We actually have another member, Alec, who's animated that for us, and we
Yep.
got to see it today off the show to you, Rachel. But adding in animations and video, I mean, we're obviously not doing an Apple Keynote level production here, but still
Right.
figuring out how to make it fun. You can also do things like overlaying your comments onto the stream. Gets
Mm-hmm.
a little risky depending on what people are typing. So keep
Right.
that in mind. But you can also show like follower notifications if you're on Twitch, YouTube, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And on Twitch, if you're trying to, maybe you're an artist trying to show your process, people can subscribe to you if you're doing this consistently enough. You're creating
Right.
engaging content with your customers. People subscribe, and as you get more subscribers, people are paying you to do your art and to do it live. And so it's kind of like a Patreon type model of just being able
Mm-hmm.
to support the creators that you really like.
Right. Right. Exactly. That actually brings up a good question, because I'm not very knowledgeable on that tech side, is the security element of when you're live streaming or when you're streaming anything. So I know, I hear about people, I don't know what you call it, photobombing a Zoom call,
Zoom bombing, yeah.
putting up inappropriate content when it's a city council meeting or, XYZ. That is, I can't speak to that, but that is something that I think people should consider when they do a live show, especially.
Yeah, and I think with that, Zoom itself had a lot of learning that it did when the pandemic
Yeah.
happened, because people were, saying, "Hey, free yoga, here's my Zoom link," and then random people on the internet are just going in there and taking over the Zoom. That's something that now, Zoom rooms have waiting rooms, passwords, things like that. So it really depends on the kind of event. If you're doing a conference, you're not going to be letting anyone have access to screen sharing.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably going to be using the webinar feature or some of these other tools like Crowdcast, and some of these others that are designed for specifically hosting very large scale events where there's going to be a lot of different people watching and interacting.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think marketing is probably a good one to end on, and maybe we have a couple examples of really good online events that I've seen. But I think, again, being where your audience is, stream
Right.
wherever you think your audience is going to be. If you want to be somewhere, like Twitch is a new one for us. I would love to see us grow our Twitch channel and actually host other Twitch streamers on there. In the future, like I'm hoping to do live programming on Twitch. If someone's doing, process writing, whatever that might be, it'd be cool to actually host that. And that's like a whole nother world of Twitch, where Twitch has its own kind of culture and lexicon and just vocabulary and all of that. But those are things that I think are super interesting. You can, if you get popular on Twitch, you can when you're done with your stream, you can raid another stream. So really popular streamers might have 100 people watching them, and then when they're done with their stream, they'll take their 100 viewers and go add them to someone else's view count. And so you might go from the Reno Collective, whatever you're watching right now, to another co-working space's Twitch, and suddenly now they're getting exposed to a bunch of new viewers. So it's a really cool, fun way. I had never seen it.
Yeah.
I've used Twitch mostly passively in the past, but getting into it and just kind of seeing how that goes has been really fun. I think the Burning Man was a very interesting idea in online events. They specifically had 8 official events. Some of them were literally this, Zoom calls with burners. Right. Some of them were virtual reality, where you actually move around and interact with burners in like a Second Life or a VR space. And again, all of those depend on what tools you have, what tech you have access to. You know, I don't have an Oculus or any of those headsets to go do that.
Right.
But
audience versus content creator. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of content to create. Right? Like for Apple, it wouldn't have made sense for them to create like an Apple store and put people virtually in it. It made more sense to make really amazing video, animations, things like that. So your mileage will vary, for sure.
Yeah.
The other one I would say is worth checking out is GitHub Satellite. If you search for GitHub Satellite, you can see the website for it. But it's actually already happened, but it's a really good way of seeing like what the event looks like after the fact with all the speaker videos. What was really nice about theirs is that while the show was happening, you actually got to see the live show, which it's unclear if they were recorded or live, which is pretty good on their end that I couldn't tell.
Okay.
I could go either way. It was awkward either way, right? So, but it was really good content, and you got to see the agenda on the screen, so you could shoot, like maybe you weren't interested in the next talk, but you wanted to like, you know, go to lunch and come back and watch the next one. So I think letting people know like what's coming up, again, not repeating it where if it's a conference, it doesn't need to be for 6 hours. It definitely doesn't need to be all back to back. Maybe you break it up over a week and let people watch an hour a day or however that might be for you. And
just time release.
Yeah, don't add to the Zoom burnout, and I think you're going to be pretty set.
Yeah, do something, produce, whether it's in the production or whether it's in the content, something that is different. Not the same old
Not the
thing.
same. Yeah, I think this is probably one of the more different things on Twitch right now. I don't think there's a lot of people talking about how to Twitch and how to how to Zoom. Awesome. Well, I think that is really going to cover the things that we had. Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, if there's any events or ideas of things that you'd like to see, I think a lot of us, especially, you know, I am not a parent, but listening to like what you've had to listen to with your kids doing online education, it's like, it's interesting to think of like, how can we reinvent education or events, conferences? And I think right now there's probably 1,000 new startups being launched on fixing that. Obviously, we needed those like 6 months ago, not 6 months from now. But, you know, even simple things like I saw in Mexico was just doing, they were doing live education on TV. Like, why reinvent the wheel? We have television networks. Let's just say this channel is going to be this grade and this channel is this grade, and just like have that. Obviously, that's like a one-size-fits-all education for people, but you know, the TV channel is much easier to figure out than joining Microsoft Teams, Zoom, all these different tools.
Right, and I mean, my assumption would be that more people have a television than have a computer at home that they can do that with. So.
Yeah, access to tech is definitely a big piece.
That's a huge, Again, another consider your audience.
Yeah.
What are they using?
We'll solve the education problem next episode, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely not something I think about constantly.
Yes. We got to get everybody a teaching degree. So awesome. Yeah. Well, I don't see any questions coming through. Hopefully this was helpful for everybody out there, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Yes.
We are trying to get our YouTube name, so if you are watching us on YouTube, if you can give us a subscribe, that'd be awesome.
Yes.
If you want to tune in every Wednesday at 5 p.m., we'll be here. Every week we're kind of just pulling together more and more apps. So this week we did Periscope. Who knows what we'll be doing next week? It's all
Just throw a bunch on there.
fun experience. So awesome. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Colin. And thank you guys for watching. So you hear the sound in the background, but we're off, right? Nope.